It's Vancouver's podcast on the Canada's Podcast Network.
So, hi, this is Angie Faye. As you know, this is Mel. Mel, do you want to say hi?
Hello, everybody.
Shield Maiden is a one-woman play, and you are the creator and artist and writer. Tell me about your sadistic side in Shield Maiden.
Well, I mean, I think it's easy to joke and take her there, but I think what it's really all about is feminine power. And Shield Maiden is a one-woman show written in the format of a TED Talk. So my character, Ingrid Larsdöttir, is a 10th century Viking, and so the audience goes back in time and is in a longhouse when Ingrid decides she needs to recruit more warriors. So what you see is a woman who's a leader. She's a career soldier. She kills people and goes on raids for a living. She's fully in charge of herself, and I think when we aren't used to seeing women that unbroken by patriarchy, we throw all kinds of labels on her because it brings up so much in ourselves, including sadistic. She's actually not a sadist, but because she's so powerful, and because she uses weapons, you know, and because she has a violent, dark side, right? We label it as something else.
Now, I've had the privilege, of course, of being in your audience, right? As a friend, yeah. But also as
you were at the first show.
I was at the first show, and I can't express the power of, you know, it was a full house. I was also sitting next to a friend who was there with her mother. You know, it's a play with profanities and, like you said, weapons and sexual innuendo and war, and you know, you paint a very vivid picture of brutal, you know, incarceration and, you know, and killing and stuff, because it's how people fought in warrior days, right? In Viking days.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a person in the audience that wasn't deeply moved. I have the privilege of knowing the underlying message, right? I have Norwegian blood. You know, we share, you and I've been in many, many situations together where, you know, we've raged, we've danced, we've been totally ourselves. We've, you know, been in those moments of total vulnerability and joy and crying. And to me, the play is so much more than what Mel, even I know that you and I know that it's so much more than that, but how, I don't even know what the compelling question, what is the compelling question? What is the message that you would love to tell every woman right now or man that is listening about why the world is broken right now and what we should be listening to?
Buckle up, kids. Okay, so the message this week. So you're asking me this question this week, so you get this week's answer. This week's answer is that patriarchy doesn't work anymore. Patriarchy doesn't work anymore, and patriarchy is a system. It is not about hatred of men at all. It is about, like when I say break patriarchy, I'm not saying break men. I'm not saying men are evil. Men are victims of patriarchy too, but patriarchy is set up to protect men in power. And that is a problem. And it's been a problem for centuries. And, you know, when my character existed in the 10th century, Christianity was just starting to spread, and that's when patriarchy was starting to rise into prominence. And until then, you know, paganism, goddess worship, these were the ways that people thought about their relationship to one another, their relationship to nature, things they couldn't understand. They incorporated women into their theology or their spiritual systems. And it's not to say that it was like great for women, but at least in that time, there was more equality. And then Christianity spread and patriarchy spread, and you just haven't seen women in power truly worldwide since. You have these moments. You have the Angela Merkels. You have the I'm just blanking on her name, the New Zealand Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Can't think of her name right off.
We'll come back to her.
But, you know, we have these moments, but they're so few and far between, and they don't last, you know. So this week's message from the play is address patriarchy. Women of privilege need to find their feminine strength, their feminine power, and practice not giving it away, turning it over so quickly, so that as we rise in prominence, then we help women who don't have privilege. We change laws, we change social systems to protect everybody, but it won't happen until women of privilege step up, fully own. Yeah.
So I feel compelled to dissect the word privilege a little bit. And my story in sitting at a dinner table with with Bruce and my parents, and I was feeling kind of teary-eyed, you know, and my parents were, you know, I love my parents. They're so great. They're so full of passion and energy. And we're all alpha sitting at the table, and I'm always I'm the quiet one amongst my family, believe it or not. And where they're sitting there, and I remember feeling the need to say to them, you know, I come from a privileged family. And do you know what? My mom jumped in. She says, "Oh, no. You know, no, we didn't give you enough. We didn't do enough trips. You know," and I just remember doing a stopgap, and my dad didn't even understand my comment. Yeah. I could just see it was like a glazed over. I have no idea what she's talking about. Like, you know, my daughter's an idiot right now. I could just feel it in the moment. And I can't explain privilege. Privilege, you know, we live meager or simple lifestyles, right? You and I, right? We have this mindset, and we know that we live in a place of abundance, and we have abundance within us. And like, that's something that we know, you and I share. So when we say privilege, I would define it as we're aligned. We are aligned and we have all of our basic needs met. And so we have more to give, right? So there's a voice or energy that we can give to the world. That's how I would define privilege. What can you add to that, Mel?
I think the number one thing I would say as a woman, being a privileged woman, means that I'm a safe woman. I do not live in a violent home. I live in a community and a country that is more safe than others, not necessarily for women across the country, and certainly not Indigenous women or women of color. But I would define privilege firstly as safe. And so safe from physical harm, safe from hunger, safe from homelessness, Though that's how I would define privilege, is safe right now.
So we're feeling privileged. We have something that we would like to share with the world, perhaps the pause and reflect. Tell me about the experience that you've had since the start of COVID. What has happened for you as a powerful, privileged woman entrepreneur? What's happening for you?
Well, let's see. That's an interesting question. Physically, we've been busy on the property, so there's been a lot of turning our energy inward to the home and the property. So my husband and I, in addition to both of us being artists in our own right, we co-own a company and we work here from home. And so because there's no business coming into the company, we have time to chop firewood and finish building projects and move lots of heavy things many, many, many times over. So it's been a lot of manual labor. I mean, that's the first thought that comes to my mind since this has started. So a lot of focused energy on the home, which has been lovely. And my husband and my daughter and I have been doing this work together. So that's been nice. How else can I answer that? As a business owner, frickin' scary. We rely on the restaurant and hospitality industry for our product. And it's a very niche product, and those are mostly our clients. And that's an industry that's really struggling, and no one really knows how they're going to come out the other end and what sort of new format their reality will look. And so our reality hinges on theirs. So there's a lot of question marks there as a business owner. As an artist, as an artist, I've sort of moved through a few different phases in this last month or so. I felt initially like I needed to write my second play right away, and I started working on it and then lost focus. So I come in and out of focus with that. With regards to Shield Maiden, I don't even know what theater is going to look like coming out the other end. So I don't know when I'll step into that role again. I guess I'm in the same boat as many other people with just a lot of question marks right now.
Having just watched Outlander, the whole entire series, if only Shield Maiden was already on Netflix, that's all I can say. Is I just think, it would be like this bonding experience of all Canadian women who just, share the story of why she became a warrior.
Well, I'm not going to share all of that because that's a big giveaway, but what I will say is my character Ingrid is deeply motivated by trauma in her own personal life. So she's incredible. She's very motivated by her trauma, and she tries to move herself through the world separately from her trauma, but she really can't. She really can't. She's very encased in the terrible things that happened to her in her life. Mm-hmm. And you watch her struggle with that. Some of her struggle, she uses humor to move through some of it overt sexuality. Some of it just fucking brute force. Do you blip that? Sorry.
No, sorry. Tell me about it. Just give me one. I mean, you and I have done this right? We've done this in the pub together when we're just looking at each other and I'm like, okay, tell me what Ingrid is feeling right now, blah. And I remember being in the pub with you and just going, we're screaming at each other and of course we're acting, but nobody, well, not acting,
you were screaming. You were screaming. I was just standing there letting you have your moment.
But it was because you were like, I could see you were like struggling with, in the moment, this is my perception, is you were struggling, you're going, oh, there's a struggle here. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not a struggle for you, Mel, it shouldn't be. I said, embrace your Ingrid. And you're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, what do you mean? What do I mean? Let me show you yourself again, right? Which is, Stephanie and I, we had you by the throat and I was just like, you know what it is. It's inside you. Rah, just look at it. Blah, blah, blah. Right. And in this moment, and the whole pub was just everybody around us just like thought we were fighting. The reality is we were just letting go of fears and worries and insecurities and going, stop. You have it in you. You just.
Right. And so that's the place that people in privilege can work to get to, right? What stops us from living our fullest life? And how do we help others on that journey as well? And it takes a hell of a lot of work to face that with honesty. And I will tell you this right now, I have not enjoyed the process of finding my own inner Ingrid. It has been some of the hardest work I can ever remember doing as a human. When you say to someone, find your inner warrior, like the words are easy to say. The words are like, yeah, the words are super empowering. Find your inner warrior. Ground down into that goddess energy. Find your inner warrior. Well, the language around that is clear and simple, but the act of doing that, the act of sifting through your own trauma, sifting through your own patterns, it's really hard work. That's all I can say.
Letting go of ...
Letting go, yeah. And on the other side, it's absolutely the most rewarding process as well. It's the hardest work I've ever done. And it's also the most rewarding process. I'm learning so much about myself, and I keep finding something, and then I go, oh, what's behind that? And so I'll sift down a little bit deeper. So instead of being fearful like I used to be, now what I am finding is more curiosity. So, yeah.
There might be something magical in that sentiment, which is curiosity and openness. And, and if you could compare, and we've had lots of conversations about masculine, feminine, patriarchy, matriarchy is right, is, and curiosity and openness, which is one of my best friends' TED Talk yet to happen. But curiosity versus systems, right? And we went back to what is the biggest problem is we've created these systems to maybe control what we don't know.
Right.
As opposed to going, let's just allow what we don't know to happen.
And also to be paying attention in the moment. So say you have a reaction to something. I mean, this could happen in the business world. It could happen in your personal world. It doesn't matter. You have a reaction to something. And instead of being a harsh critic, oh, it's a total failure there. No one's going to want to work with me again. I totally messed that up. I looked like a total, newbie or whatever. Instead, wouldn't it be great if you said, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why I did that. Let me look into that a little bit more. Or I wonder what triggered that response by me. Or, just that sense of curiosity instead of harsh judgment all the time. And systems are there so that people don't ask. Systems are there because they work. But then sometimes you forget to ask the questions of the system.
Yes.
Right.
Because, as you know, what happens when you go, oh, the system, we've evolved past the system as it was. And what happens when you stay curious and say, is there a better way to do it? And you go, yes, there is. There's work to be done there, right? There's work there that needs to happen to get to better.
Well, this pandemic is an excellent example of all of that. What systems were in place when we sort of rolled into this? What's working? What's not? How can we do things better? Because it is going to happen again. So how do people approach that problem solving? Do they come at it with curiosity and kind of excitement? Oh, this is really horrible and this really sucks, but if we do this differently, there could be a really incredible outcome. So, curiosity breeds excitement. Yes. Excitement breeds innovation. And that's true in all things: relationship, work, creativity. Curiosity is super powerful in changing things.
And I'll add, the curiosity and innovation is one side of the teeter-totter, and the other side is that safety, and being able to balance. My girlfriend yesterday was like, it's the dance, or Julian said to me, the constant dance between those two things, right? Is it a time to listen, or is it a time to speak? Is it a time for innovation and new ideas, or is it a time to just harbor, have a safe harbor? Yes. And I think if nothing else, that is such an incredible takeaway. And that's this week's message from Mel. The shield maiden, the warrior woman.
That's this moment's. Just
the healer.
Ask me in 5 minutes. It could be something completely different.
So, just for fun, I know the shield maiden is your passion and like natural universal gift to the world. I know that, and you have a functional transactional relationship. Talk to me about your sign company.
So we have a business that we bought 8 years ago here on the island, and it's called Chalk It Up Signs. And I hand draw chalkboard signs. They mostly go to the US. They've been around the world as well. And Dave and I work on it together. So he does front end customer relations. I do design and artwork. And then he gets it on the other end for framing and packing. And we do it all from our home, which is amazing.
So, and where is home?
Gabriola Island.
Which is where?
Perched on the edge of nowhere is how it feels some days. So it's just a small Gulf island off of the great big large Vancouver Island off of the west coast of Canada.
And you're a Texan girl.
Born and raised.
How did you end up on Gabriola Island?
Well, I met and fell in love with a Canadian 1 million years ago, and just we came out here for a trip and knew that we would come back eventually, and so we did. So.
And you fell in love with the person?
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel about where you live?
Oh, I love where I live. I'm so grateful. Talk about privilege. I feel I'm looking out my window. I'm looking at the bay. The wind is blowing in the fruit trees, so the blossoms are dancing. And I love where I live. It's a beautiful little community. It's pretty isolated. We are, Dave and I kind of joke, Dave is my husband, we kind of joke that we're already sort of isolated. So, we already kind of live a semi-isolated life, living on the far end of a small Gulf island, rural Gulf island. We work and live at home. So there weren't a lot of steps that we had to transition to during this pandemic. So I feel very blessed.
And so most of your business is American, which is, or
Yes.
global, right?
Yeah.
There's no local, very few locals that are actually buying Chalk It Up signs, right? So you're.
Well, we have some Canadian business, and we work to increase it. But what we have found is that the Americans they just shop online easier. They maybe are more willing to take the risk of buying a product sight unseen. We're not exactly sure why, but I would say 90% of our business is American. So it's significant.
So they've already made the transition to
Significant US
accept
business.
risk and, and buy online. So they're ahead of us in that respect. And just adding to tourism, hospitality. So, we've all walked into pubs and restaurants where there's the chalkboard sign at the entry that has messages, and then behind the bar is the big menu. That's kind of what Chalk It Up signs, right?
Absolutely.
So we all can visualize what a Chalk It Up sign is.
And ours is the prettiest and the best. And we're one of the longest running companies. The woman we bought it from had been doing it for 10 years. She taught me her technique, and it's really beautiful chalkboard art. I say that with a lot of humility, but also a lot of pride. We're making good stuff.
And being on a remote island in the middle of, dare I say, whatever, I won't say it, has not been a barrier to you being able to do work globally?
No, not at all. The biggest imposition is that FedEx charges extra fees to come here to pick stuff up. So once a week, we take our shipments into Nanaimo and drop everything off at the FedEx depot. That's our biggest inconvenience.
Otherwise, so we have the shipping and distribution that we need, right?
Yeah.
For any products, big or small, whether they're a sign or they're steel containers, right? We've got it all. And so distribution is not an issue.
No.
But the reliance on tourism and hospitality perhaps is. Well,
it's incredibly passive. We don't advertise. So all we have is our longevity on the interweb. That's all we have, is that our website has been on the internet for 17 years. So it has power. So because it's such a niche thing, if you type in to your search engine, chalkboard sign menu or whatever, chalkboard art, after Pinterest, after Michael's, after Etsy, we come up first. And so Dave's job has been to pimp our website over the years and just keep it at the top of the heap, keep it relevant. That's because it's incredibly passive. We can't go out looking for, we've tried to go to like food expos in Vancouver, zero business out of that.
Why do those big events and conferences, why has that not translated to currency for you?
I haven't got a clue. I mean, we haven't tried an American food expo.
Okay.
Las Vegas has the biggest hospitality, industry expo. We've talked about going down there, but at the same time, we also want to manage what we have here. So Dave and I are not, we want to grow the business to a certain point, but we're not looking to blow the business up and have to like build a warehouse and hire 10 more artists, and we're not looking to become a massive manufacturing company. I have had to hire other artists to work with us when the load is too big, and that's super great because we can employ people here on the island, but the demand for our product isn't big enough for it. So, you know, when you say, why wouldn't, I don't know, like a food expo or a bigger expo, would it bring more business? I don't know. Do we want that much more business? I don't think so. Because I still want to like get up on stages, and Dave wants to play his guitar, and we have a kid, and you know, like it's this work life.
It's the dance, hon.
It's the dance. So how big do we want it to be? You know.
And you know, I think in a friend of mine recently said, you know, there's magic in the freedom of, you know, when the children are young, and then we get into these patriarchal systems and institutions and thinking, and then there's freedom again at the other end, right? There's freedom of the wisdom of the elders. And you know, I wonder in this, you know, we've been forced to stop and look at what is important and what's essential, you know, and we have the privilege of time and space and a roof over our heads to be able to contemplate it. And I think the number one piece for me with Ingrid is when you are given the opportunity to let your rage out. When somebody creates the space for you to let the trauma surface and the rage out, and then it's there. Once it's there, it's like you just need to blow on it and it's gone. And so, you know, when we go back to essentials of chopping wood and, you know, growing food in our backyard, which we all are, you know, we all are going to be doing that, right? And the flowers in your front garden matter. And you know, you stop and you smell the roses and you have a conversation with somebody as you're walking your dog, maybe through the fence, but that's those moments. Suddenly there's magic in the ordinary.
Yes.
But it's only after you let the rage out. Otherwise, and Ingrid's experience is, otherwise you go to war with yourself and, you know, your perceived opponents, all of the, and that's to me what Shield Maiden was about.
Yeah, the rage piece is a pretty pivotal piece out of that. And that was super intentional. Some other things weren't as intentional and they kind of surprised me, but the rage piece was very intentional. The play was written right when the Me Too movement was starting. And at the same time, this article came out about this discovery of this grave site in Sweden. It was actually discovered like 150 years ago, but they did DNA testing on it back in 2017 and found out that this grave site that contained this warrior that they, you know, buried with all these legendary grave site. Actually, it's an archaeological like top 10 kind of grave site. Turns out the body in the gravesite was a woman, and the uproar from the scientific community and the community, the world at large, that you know, this gravesite couldn't belong to a woman at the exact same fucking time that the Me Too movement was going on. I just thought, oh my God, it's like 200 years later and this woman still doesn't have a voice. I'm giving her a voice, and all of that. All of the rage that was coming up from in the Me Too movement, like I was reading it all, right? Like all of these testimonials about all of these women coming up against such horrific experiences and then having it all just brushed aside by patriarchy. And I thought, it's just not enough to just read these words on my tiny little phone. It's not enough. Like, you need to see what that rage looks like when it gets a chance to come out. You need to like viscerally experience a woman's rage. And I thought, okay, well, I'll put it in the framework of this 10th century person, because it's extrapolated far enough away from where we are right now. So even though it's true, it won't be as threatening.
Right. Yes.
Turns out it was just as threatening to people, but that's okay. That's all right. That's their issue to work on. But it allowed, like, the fact that she's a warrior and a leader, and she like carries a sword and a shield, and like she owns her rage. She doesn't apologize for it once. And getting to work that out on stage, I have come in touch with a bit of my own rage. You know, as a Southern woman, we are trained from the beginning to be very polite, very accommodating, very generous, very soft and receptive, and making it all very nice for you. And then all of a sudden, I'm not making it nice. And that's an interesting place to be.
It's almost like the bottled up niceties when, oh God, you know this story about my friend who, after spending my whole entire upbringing being that nice girl, okay, and not having really a safe place in my own home and my own relationships to express moments of, and then meeting somebody who says, you know, I'm angry at you. I'm like, wow, I'm so excited you're angry at me. I'm just really, and you're sharing that with me? Great. I'm like, why? Why are you angry at me? Great. And then he told me a story, and I'm like, oh my God, Greta, do you want to hear my perspective? And there was a pause, and he said, yes. And then I shared my story. And the moment of greater understanding was not, it went from, I see you as the perpetrator, you know, and the cause of my frustration and anger right now, to, oh my God, I created this for myself, was kind of his answer. And it's got nothing to do with you at all. I created this situation. I created the conflict, but it comes from an actual deep, and what I saw in the moment was, I'm like, you are the one that is deserving, right? And you keep trying to accommodate other people. And it goes back to that, we all have this do unto other, you know, be of service. And it's not until we go, oh my God, I've been of service and now I'm angry and now I need to like let it go and blah, 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 and feel to be in a safe place where I can express it. And that we'll all be in a better place. Like, I just think, stop worrying about the systems that we're creating from this moment on. Do things differently.
Absolutely. And I would say one thing further. You said something earlier about when you let your, I'm paraphrasing, but when you let your rage out, you're not going to war anymore. And I would say, I would shift that a little bit, because as humans, we're always dealing with the dark, the shadow side and the light side. And we always want to present the light side. I'm happy I'm content, I'm fulfilled, I'm full of gratitude. I love you, you know, but we are also equally full of the shadow, you know, the anger, the jealousy, the loneliness, the fear, the rage. And what I'm learning through talking with therapists and other artists, you know, when you let the light sort of shine in on the darker spaces into the shadow, there's growth, right? So it's not about, I don't think we ever lose rage. I don't think you'd get to say, oh, that feeling is rage and I'll never have it again. See, I just yelled, I'll never be mad again. Rage be gone. We don't get to say that, right? It's still a natural human reaction, but what you get to do is you get to say, oh, I've already let light shine in on that shadowy, dark bit of myself, rage. I recognize that as rage. How am I going to use that right now? Am I going to use it to cut somebody down? Because that's often where rage goes. We try to hurt somebody as much as, it's usually from fear, right? Fear and frustration, that's where rage comes out. And so are we trying to hurt somebody so that they feel as badly as we do? You know, how are we gonna let that rage out? Or, rage is still useful, like we still have battles to fight. Women are not equal. Women still don't earn the same amount that men do. Women are still subjected to so much, women and children are subjected to so much violence in the home. So there's a lot to fight for, and rage is a great fuel. You just got to figure out how to let it be a slow burning fuel instead of like quick ignite, you know? Yeah. And that's a challenge. That's a real challenge. And someone like Ingrid knows how to use her rage. She's very familiar and in touch with her rage. It comes out and she goes, oh, yeah, there's that thing, right? Because she needs it. She can't like go on a raid and like whip her sword out and prepare to kill someone if she's not in touch with that driving power, with that dark side, right? Mm-hmm. She's super in touch with it. But she can like put it back in her back pocket and sit back and have a meet and flirt with somebody, you know, just as easily. But that's because she's in touch with the rage. So if we can learn how to just acknowledge these darker, shadowy bits of ourselves, I don't know, the world will be a better place.
You know, and I would love to put a magic wand in your hand. And just for a minute, close your eyes and go, magic wand in Mel's hand. What does the world look like for you in 5 years?
I hope that in 5 years, the world has used this pandemic as a wake-up call to think about the bottom line of human existence. Like right now, the bottom line is letting people fall and fail and starve and die. And like in 5 years, could there be a global minimum, what do they call it? A living wage for everyone? Could you rethink this so that when these pandemics, because there's no way that the governments can support people to stay at home anymore. Is there some way that the system can shift so that these pandemics don't economically crash the system, but people are more supported and leveled out through all the different strata of socioeconomic levels? That's a lot of big words. Help people. I hope in 5 years they figure out how to help more people. Be more better, humans. I wave my magic wand. Be better humans.
So, and the only way, and what we know is the only way to be a better human and create the space for betterment of humanity is if there's no trauma and your essentials are looked after.
Yeah, do the fucking hard work, people. Like, turn inward, look at yourselves, do the hard work.
Mel, I
Darling.
love your signs.
Thank you.
You know I'm a Viking warrior with you.
I know you
I would love to see Shield Maiden on TV. That's what I would love to see.
I would too.
But that's just self-serving. Here's the thing. I know what's self-serving will serve so many others. I just know that women everywhere globally would relate to Ingrid. So anyway, it should be in like every language possible. Anyway, that's if I could wave a magic wand for you on your behalf, that's what I would like to see.
Thank you, my friend.
Is there anything that you would like to say that we haven't touched on?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll maybe ask something more specific. Is there a book or a resource or an inspirational quote that you would love to share that has been fuel fodder for you that you could share with others? Or song or something.
No. Find the music that speaks to you and dance your ass off in your living room. That's all I can really offer at this point is, find your own tune to dance to and then just give her.
Dance. Awesome. You're beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angie. You're beautiful. I love you, my friend. Thank you for this time.